More people than I thought were going to be here.
I haven't seen that one yet. Yeah.
I don't
basically
keep up with all this.
Just
remember, okay, I'm good. Oh my God, I'm a freaking program. I'm a designer, and it's my job. Oh wait, no, it's the other way around. The other way around. Wow. All right, while everybody's coming in and getting seated, I like to. I'm not going to start quite yet. I'm going to give them a couple more minutes. This is my first time I've ever given kind of like a professional talk. Some of you have seen me at Obsidian. Some of you have been involved with your colleges. You've come and had a tour. And more than likely, I've been there and I've talked to you, and it's always been very casual. So if I botch this or blow this, well, it's, you know, I didn't get paid for it. So. But I like to always get, like, whenever I talk at Obsidian, I always like to try to get a feel of the land, because I kind of, there will be a slide presentation, and I will use this as a guideline. But like, for example, like, if all of you were artists, or if all of you were programmers, I'm going to tailor things more towards art or programming, or just your interest. So, like a quick show of hands here. One is, how many of you actually want to work in the game industry? Okay, so good. Believe it or not, I've actually had tours come, and they're like, and I'm like, how many of you want to work in the game industry? Like 18 kids and one. And I'm like, really? All right. How many of you are artists, or want to be an artist? Okay, we got some artists over here. One over there, maybe. Oh yeah, I remember, I saw your art. It was good. Programmers. Okay, good. I like that. All right. Designers. Okay, good. All right, so mostly programmers, but a decent showing from artists and designers. What about audio? Okay, if you're audio, you should probably be in Vincent's talk, because Vincent's the audio guy. I will also talk about audio, or I can answer questions about audio, but Vincent is really, really smart, and he really knows his stuff. This is also going to sound strange. How many of you want to be producers? Really? 2, 3? Okay. All right, well, I got some information there, too. All right. But now I kind of got the lay of the land here. Somebody gonna just like tell me to start, or should I just wait a little? I thought we're still coming in. I'm okay with that.
I don't think anyone's going to tell you when to start.
The doors are closing. So. All right, I guess when they close the doors closed. Okay. So like I said, this is my first time, so be gentle. So this is a talk I put together. Kyle actually suggested kind of the theme of the talk, so if you don't like it, wherever Kyle is, you can blame Kyle. And that was me trying to be clever. It didn't really work. So I call this Life in the Game Industry, Tales of Intrigue and Mystery. Probably won't be a whole lot of intrigue and mystery, because I tend to just talk. What do I hope you get from this? Oh, I can look here. Okay. Insights on the biz. I will tell it like it is. I will answer questions, I will be honest. If you ask me something like, what do you really think of Fergus Urquhart, your CEO? I'll tell you the truth, but I'm not going to give you anything salacious. You follow me? I'm going to try to share tips for getting into the biz. And this can be everything from something broad and general, like about your attitude and what you should be doing, to maybe something specific. And then like for some of the programmers, I actually brought some example questions in work to give you kind of a taste of what kind of stuff you might get asked. Follow your dreams while you can. Also, one last note, I'm recovering from bronchitis pretty severely. So, I tend to be a positive person and an energetic person. And I'll go into this more in the talk. When I got started, there was no such thing really as getting a job in the video game business. It was hobbyists, you know, or I shouldn't say when I got started, when I was a kid, you know. And things have changed a lot for the better, and I'll go over that in more detail when I get to it. But the other part I want to mention about this is that some of you were very young, some of you were not. It's never too late. I was 33 years old when I got into the game industry. So, and there are people who were older and younger, but I hope you'll have some fun with this, maybe laugh, you know, but I don't want any pity laughs, right? So, now obviously a disclaimer, I'm going to be sharing with you anecdotal experience. That means it's not empirical. Your experience might not be the same if you go to another company. Some things will be similar, you know, like a programmer is a programmer, an artist is an artist, but what you see and what happens, you know, anyway, that's my disclaimer. I also really love RPGs. There was only one company I ever wanted to work for, and that was Black Eye. And that's not where I'm working. Okay, with that, let's get started. Who am I? Some of you never heard of me. Most of you never heard of me. I am Anthony Davis. I'm a lead programmer at Obsidian. But we can't start here. A long time ago, back in my day, my mom bought me an Odyssey 2. Does anybody even know what that is?
Yes.
Wow! Bonus points. So look at this. It had a keyboard, right? And it was, you could not type on this thing. It was terrible. Anyway, so I begged and I pleaded and I saved my money and I got an Atari 2600. That was it. I mean, some graphics now. And then, my mom was very poor. We grew up extremely poor. And to this day, I don't know how she did it. And this is flashing down here. Is it flashing for you guys?
No.
Okay. She got me a computer. I don't know how she afforded it. I really don't. And I got a Commodore 64. Had 64K of memory. It was unbelievable. And then I got some RPGs for it. Everybody hear some RPG? I should have asked that question. Are you guys RPG fans? Anybody? Yeah. A few? Okay. Has anybody here? Well, we'll get to my games. All right. And then I knew what I wanted to do. When I had the Odyssey and I had the Atari, it didn't even occur to me that this could be a job. And it wasn't until I got the Commodore 64 and I picked up a book on BASIC. For those programmers here, have you ever even heard of BASIC? Yeah. Who can tell me what BASIC stands for? Nobody? I'll give you a water bottle if you can tell me right now. No?
I think it was created to help students learn the program.
Sure, but it's an acronym.
It starts with business. I didn't remember that much.
I think it's beginner.
Yeah.
Beginner all-purpose symbolic instruction code. So again, you don't have to know that anymore. That's a good thing. Okay. I want to make video games. Hooray! But this was like a long time ago. And what I used to hear was, are you crazy? You can't do that. Get serious. Get real. Computers are a fad. Bill Gates even said that the internet was a fad. Focus on getting a real job.
Feels bad.
And that was from my friends and family. What a bunch of crap. You guys don't have that now. Some of you now, some of you might, right? Some of your parents, or whoever you went with, your friends, are like, not really, but I want to share something. But I, being poor, have only my dreams. I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams. William Butler Yeats wrote that. It was also in a movie. Equilibrium. Anybody seen that movie?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Sean Bean says that right before he gets shot in the face by Christian Bale. So, I want to pause for a moment. Because part of this, and this is where I said at the beginning, like there'll be a little motivational talk here or whatever. You guys and girls, I use guys colloquially. I'm not trying to gender or trigger anything. I'm old and I talk the way I talk. What I'm trying to say here is that you have a lot of advantages and you should be thankful and follow those dreams, and you should encourage other people to follow those dreams. Your children, someday, some of you will have kids. You can crush their dreams like that. My wife wanted to be a marine biologist all her life. She interned at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, did all these things. And her father, who was a good man, he really was, raised the children, but just carelessly would say, like, you can't make money doing it. There's no kind of job you can most. And just over time, eventually, he just crushed that dream down. Same thing with your friends. I had a friend named Steve. Steve went to MIT. He got 2 degrees. Super smart guy. And he used to tell me, he's like, you're not smart enough to get in the game industry. He applied to work at Blizzard. He got a perfect on their programming test. Blizzard didn't hire him because he's an a-hole. but the point of it was he used to tell me, he's like, if they didn't hire me, what chance do you have? Don't be like that. Don't be like Steve, okay? Be a good friend. Again, it's not like, like you're saying, like, I want to be a dinosaur when I grow up. Right? But work with your friends. If it interests you, there's a lot of you all have the same dreams, the same goals. Every single one of you raised your hand and said you want to be in the game industry. Work with your friends. And encourage your coworkers. Someday you'll have a job in the game industry. The game industry can be a negative place. I'm going to get to some of this a little later. It's a immensely rewarding job, but it's not an easy job. Right? But we'll get to that. People never forget it when they crush your dreams. Some of you in here maybe have had your dreams crushed, right? Maybe accidentally, maybe on purpose for you. And you're going to carry it forever, right? But you'll get past it and you'll get over it. But just don't be like that. Be positive. All right, I'm going to wrap up the sappy stuff. Let's go on. I don't know if you guys knew this. College is expensive. I couldn't afford college, so I joined the Army. Look at how thin I was. So thin. And yes, that's a real gun. And I got money, and I went to Texas A&M. And there I was like, all right, let's do this degree plan thing, right? I imagine all of you have a degree plan of some sort, and you're like, I'm going to take these courses. And I'm like, I want to make a video game. Like, what? You're lucky you have a computer science degree. That is the truth. Back when people of my age a long time ago wanted to go to college, you were lucky if you found a university that had a computer science degree. Now you can go to college to be a video game designer or a video game artist. That's crazy, and that's so awesome. Again, once again, I heard, get a real job, kid. So I did. I worked for a company named Generon. I've worked for Xerox. I've worked for Dow Chemical. I've even worked for the MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. I'm from Texas. And I worked for a company called Netscape. Does anybody here even know what Netscape is anymore? Firefox. Everybody knows my code's in there. All right, nothing brilliant. I was not even a very good engineer back then, but it's still there. My code is still there. Actually, and there's even a monument with all the people who worked on that, and my name's up there. It kind of blows, though. I'm going to be honest. The real world, if you have a dream and you want to follow it, this is not what you want to do. You want to make games? All right, let's talk about that. Back when I finally was like, all right, let's get into this game business. Let's keep trying. And sometimes you would have newspaper ads. I don't even know if you guys even know what a newspaper is these days, right? But without fail, it was always experience required. Experience required. And it was the catch-22. How do I get experience when experience is required? So my friend and I made this. We made a game for the Palm Pilot called Aldon's Crossing. And it still works and it still runs, and I've got it on here. And I made this game, and now I had experience. And I'm like, yes, now it's time. Now I'm going to apply for my dream job. There's only one place I want to work. At Black Isle Studios, a division of Interplay. And no joke, within like 2 months, like I sent the game, I did some emails, I did some phone conversations, and they were like, yeah, we can't really, you'll see. I mean, literally, it's like, I'm like, what is going on? Sad truth. That's just, I couldn't believe it. But then wait, an ex told me about a new studio. She had no reason to tell me this. I don't even know why. For her, it was probably a curiosity. And Obsidian was born in 2003, and I applied and I got the job. I was 33 years old, like I told you earlier. I already been in the software industry for a decade. I'd already been doing a lot of stuff. I took a $50,000 pay cut when I went to Obsidian. Because, and again, we'll cover some of that a little bit. You know, first of all, and I guess I should ask this at the beginning, getting the lay of the land. How many people are like, I want to be in the game industry because I want to be rich? Be honest. Okay, good. You people are way more grounded than some of the people I've talked to. So, I'm going to get this out of the way. Yes, I worked on that. Yes, I worked on all three of those. Yes, I worked on that. I did not work on that. Not officially, anyway. Yes, I worked on that. Yes, I worked on that. No, I didn't work on that. Yes, I worked on that. No, I didn't work on that. There's some stuff coming, maybe some stuff. Okay. So, Obsidian, when you love RPGs and you follow RPGs, and I would follow all these. I didn't know who these people are. I didn't know what they looked like. I couldn't go look them up on Wikipedia. You can now. But, I followed them. I would read the credits. Who worked on these things? I remember when I met Frank, and I still can't say his last name. He was like, well, you can pronounce it, Frank Kowalski. And I met him, and I was like, oh my God, I know who you are. And he's like, you're beeping me. And I'm like, no, you were the lead programmer on Baldur's Gate 2, Dark Alliance. And he's like, all right. I was a big fan, and so when I met Fergus, he's the CEO. He's got a Wikipedia page. Chris Parker does not, which is really weird. Chris Parker has probably shipped more games than anybody I know, and he doesn't have a wiki page. Darren Monahan does. He has also shipped an enormous amount of games. These are all owners at Obsidian. That's my boss. That's my boss. And Chris Avalone used to be an owner there, and he's awesome. And he's also got his own Wikipedia page. So that's really kind of weird. But it's a very casual environment. It's very open. At any point I can walk into Fergus's office and I can talk to him. It's a very open, transparent company. Again, anecdotal. Not every company you work for will be that way. But, you know. And then I'm also working alongside RPG legends, people I've heard of. Leonard Boyarsky, one of the creators of Fallout. Who's heard of Fallout? Who has heard of Fallout? One, two, a few of you? Okay. Interesting anecdote about this guy. And well, there's Josh Scheuer. Anybody played any of Josh's games? He played Fallout New Vegas. He was the project director, systems designer. All right. How about Pillars of Eternity? Oh, you guys can do better than that. All right, we're giving a couple of them away for free at the raffle. So maybe somebody get like. And then Tim Kaine. Does anybody here know who Tim Kaine is? Kind of. Tim Kaine created Fallout. He's the guy who created it. Who said he knew? All right, I'm gonna here. Here's a water bottle. Catch it. Okay. Funny story, Fallout, and Tim tells this in some of his talks, Fallout was canceled, almost canceled multiple times. And it started as just him getting people together to stay late and interplay and work with pizza. And he was making a little engine. Tim Kaine is one of these brilliant guys. He's both a designer and a programmer, and very talented. But he was working on he had a game engine, he was working on it, and Brian Fargo, who was the owner or president or CEO or whatever, would let him kind of do this. And I tell this story, and Leonard says I get this story wrong every time, but they needed to come up with a visual look for Fallout. And Tim and Leonard and some other people, they would work on it, Jason Anderson, some of these guys, Chris Jones, my boss, also worked on it. And then one day, I guess Leonard went home and was just doodling. And he had this idea, and he came back in with this sketch of like the 1950s family. The man's got the hat, the woman's got the pearls, the kids have got like a baseball glove and a teddy bear, and they're walking into the vault as the nuclear explosion's going off, and they're smiling, the dad's got like a pipe. And he was like, I kind of made this. And then Tim looked at it, and he was like, yes, that is Fallout. The retro, futuristic look of Fallout, and it was born from that. And it's, again, it's just one of those moments of like organic creativity. And future RPG legends too. These are people who like, you may have never even heard of, you know. Well, there's Josh, you probably have heard of Josh, but some of the other ones and stuff in there, and I can't really say like Jeff Huskus and Eric Finstermaker, and like if you played Fallout New Vegas, Eric Finster wrote like a lot of stuff that people love, like Vault 22 and things like that, and just, well, that's me, but that's, and Adam Brennicky was the lead programmer and executive producer on Pillars of Eternity. You know, back then he was just a dude who I used to beat at poker. This guy right here, Jorge Salgado, I was telling this anecdote earlier. When a gentleman came in and he was asking for like how to get into the business, you know, because he was going to go to a different talk. He's a designer. Jorge had no professional experience. We hired him when we were getting ready to start Fallout New Vegas. He made a mod for Oblivion, and it was one of the top-rated, if not the top-rated mod. And we hired him to work on Fallout New Vegas, and he's now a senior designer, and he's enormously talented. So sometimes these moments just happen, serendipity. Bethesda also tried to hire him at the exact same time. He chose this over Bethesda. But he could probably go to Bethesda anytime he wants, just guys and girls. Why am I telling you all this? I don't know if I've made it quite clear, but I love Obsidian. I've been there for 14 years now. And if you love the people you work with, and if you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life. I don't get paid nearly as much as I got paid 14 years ago. Well, okay, actually, I am just now making as much money as I used to make 14 years ago. But it's not about the money. I wake up in the morning. When I was making all that money, that was when I was working for Netscape, or Nutscape as we used to call it. There were days I would just not even want to get out of bed. That doesn't really happen at Obsidian. There are days I will wake up and I'm tired because I worked late or whatever, I'm not going to lie. But I go to work, and even if I'm working on a project that doesn't thrill me, which actually rarely happens at Obsidian, the people are amazing. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more later when I talk more about when you're looking for a job and when you're looking for a place you want to work. So getting into the business. This is the most simple advice I can tell you is just do something. I cannot tell you how many people we have hired just because they have done something. It wasn't the most, didn't necessarily have to be the most polished or the fanciest or whatever, but they did something. Eric Finstermaker was a programmer that we hired. I remember I was working on Neverwinter Nights 2. I'm sitting at my desk. I am working. And my boss, Frank at the time, comes by and he drops something off on my desk. I swear it was a floppy, but in my mind, I'm like, could you have fit all that on a floppy disk? I don't remember. But it was a mod for Neverwinter Nights 1. So we're working on Neverwinter Nights 2, so it's applicable. I put in this, is anybody familiar with Neverwinter Nights? It's a Dungeons and Dragons game, for those of you who aren't familiar. Is everybody familiar with Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, good. It's not just for nerds anymore. So I put this in and I loaded this mod, but I played it, and it started off in a locker room with like a bunch of minotaurs and orcs. And you then talk to them, and then you walk out the tunnel, and you're on a football field. He had scripted basically kind of like a Blood Bowl. I didn't know it was Blood Bowl at the time, but it was like a Blood Bowl knockoff. You played football in this mod. And Frank came back a little later and was like, what do you think? I was like, hire him right now. Don't even waste another minute. Well, again, they didn't really listen to me, and we still went through the process, and thankfully we still managed to hire him. And we hired him as a programmer, and he worked as a programmer for a long time, and then he said, I want to write. And he became a designer, and he worked on as a, our programmer. They were not happy losing a good programmer to be a designer, but Obsidian is a pretty easygoing company, and they let him do it. So again, but all these people, when they come and they apply, if they have something to show, it just stands out. It's better than just a resume. So again, like I said, mods, indies, demos, the stuff you're working on, every single game here I saw today, I thought was outstanding. And some of them I felt like were maybe 1 or 2 steps away from something you could publish. I thought they were all really good. And I mean it. I'm not just saying that to blow smoke up your butts. They were good. Practice every day. If you're a coder, or if you're an artist, or you're a writer, do it every day. I know that's not feasible, but that should be your goal. Chris Avallone is one of the most famous narrative designers in the industry. He's got a big Wikipedia page. He wrote Planescape Torment. How many people here are familiar with Planescape Torment? A few. Planescape Torment is got a little, I'm going to just move on. He has a thing he does where he goes to a website called Write or Die if he feels like he needs to write. And what Write or Die does is he'll start writing, and if he stops, it starts deleting what he's written. Oh. So that's why it's called Write or Die. But you should try to do this every day. These things are all perishable skills. And they will, if you're like, well, I'm just going to take a break from coding for 2 years or 3 years or a year, even 6 months, it will affect you. Same thing with art. Back when I used to be on the social medias, you guys all familiar with the social medias? I remember there was an artist, and I wish I could remember for the life of me, because I would have put it in here, I would have found the picture. He took a thing he drew like 3 years ago, and it was pretty good, but it was definitely not anything you would publish. And then he was like, this is me drawing the same picture today. And you looked at that and you were like, wow. I mean, it was just amazing. And I wish I had something to show you. I couldn't find it. But that was just him practicing every day. It makes a difference. Passion. And again, the bronchitis is hitting me. But if you don't love this job, it's hard to do. It sustains you. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that there won't be times when you're crunching or working late. And by the way, if you interview at a company and they say they don't do that, probably not being honest. But that passion will sustain you. Now again, passion's like a battery, right? It will eventually run out also. You're all human, right? But it can help. And then you also need to find ways to, of course, recharge your passion, right? Playing a game or whatever. And be professional. This is a very small industry. I told some of you anecdotally when we were looking at the games, I said that if I went and I talked to some of the other talkers here, I bet you within the span of like 20 minutes, we would find a bunch of mutual people we knew. Sure enough, Vincent, the guy who's doing the audio talk from that game company, he came over here and we started talking. And he knows my project director, Richard Taylor. They've been friends for 20 years. We know a bunch of other people and stuff. So be professional. Don't be dishonest. Don't lie. Don't be rude. I mean, again, none of you struck me as that way. You all struck me as being very nice, very professional young people. But it will know, because I get calls all the time. Hey, this is me in Texas. Do you know this guy? Yep, I'm his boss. Yep, he's applying. What do you know about him? He's awesome. You should hire him. It's a small business. It is so unbelievably small. Like I said before, you're never too old. Don't give up. It took me from 13, when I got my Commodore 64, I knew I wanted to do it. It didn't happen for 20 years. You're never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream. Some of you may think you want to be a video game maker, and maybe it's actually something else. I encourage you to figure out what that is and to try it. So some of you, I said, you know, did you want to be a designer, right? I don't remember who they were, but there were a few of you. Designers typically have a very diverse and broad skill set. They're jacks of all trades, they're masters of few. There's lots of videos and lots of talks you can go and you can watch about designers, things they know. Chris Avallone got a degree in architecture. Josh Sawyer has a degree in music. And Tim Kaine has a degree in programming. They're all very diverse. They soak up everything like a sponge. And you know, there's narrative designers, content designers, area designers, systems designers, UI UX designers, There's all sorts of designers. Now, not every game company is going to have those, right? If you come to Obsidian and you want to be a narrative designer someday, that's probably going to happen. If you go to, like, say, EA to go work on Madden, you're probably not going to get a job as a narrative designer. I mean, that just makes sense, right? It's a hard job to get, but it's not impossible. And the reality is it's because everyone's kind of a designer. Right? Everybody either wants to be a designer or they think they're a designer, and to be honest, to varying degrees of success, everybody is a designer. Obsidian actually has a very cool policy. It's pretty open door. We have something called Confluence. It's kind of like a corporate wiki, right? And people will post their design docs, and then they encourage people to write comments and make notes and to make suggestions, and we do that. So we're a very open environment. Again, not every company will be that way. Understanding what is fun and why. This is crucial for being a designer. And because it's awesome is not an answer. If I ask you, if I say, why is a level up mechanic fun? All right, if you just be like, oh, because it's awesome. No, there's math, there's understanding there, right? Like, why in Fallout does it every other level I get a perk or I do this? Because there's a power graph there. There's a goal behind it. And if you can explain certain things like that, that's a good skill set to have. That's actually more of a system designer skill, but it's very important. Design is life. Design is where all games start, and it links creativity and innovation. And there were some artists in here. I know you were an artist, or are an artist, you're an artist, I know there's some artists in here. Diverse but focused skill set. 2D, 3D, character, environment, concept, animator, rigger, object artist, level artist, there's all sorts of artists. I was talking to this gentleman here, and anecdotally, it is very difficult to get a specific art job, because they mostly start off as generalists, and then as they gain experience, they become more focused. It's not impossible, it's just hard. So for example, if you came to Obsidian to be an artist, you're gonna get like an artist internship or a junior artist position, you might start off making chairs, right, or crates. But again, hard job to get, but not impossible. Persevere, show me your portfolio. But it can also be out of all of the positions, it's by, unless you're like Chris Avallone or Josh Sawyer, right? It's a very glamorous position. When you can point to what you have done visually, and people can see that and they're awed by that. Visually, we're all visual creatures and we react to that. We have a process at Obsidian. Every Thursday we blog about what we're working on. And nobody goes to see what I blog about, right? They go to see the pictures from the artist. Look what I did, isn't this awesome? One time I actually went, I just took screenshots of my code and I put it up there. And then Kyle, being a smart ass, went and reviewed my it's just like, okay, Kyle. You're actually giving form to design's ideas. And again, it's crucial. A lot of also what I'm talking about here, I took the slide out because I almost never see anybody who wants to be in audio, but now I have. All of this also applies to audio, except audio, whatever. And it's visual married to tech. You have to understand how things work. On Neverwinter Nights 2, which is a long time ago, 10 years ago, all of a sudden we had a level and our frame rate just tanked. And that was because it took a long time actually to figure it out. We were like, what happened? Well, let's review the code changes. Somebody was working on the renderer, working on this and working on this. I'll give you clues to what it was. Okay. An artist, what finally happened was, because again, we were building the tech, and it was like, well, let me get wireframe mode turned on. So we're walking around the level very slowly because the frame rate's tanking, and we turned on wireframe, and you're like, well, that looks right. Oh, there's something wrong with your wireframe rendering because that crate doesn't look like it's wireframe. You get closer, and you're like, oh my God, you already know what a crate is, right? It's a box. It's a 6,000 poly crate. So you got to be able to understand some of these things, right? And I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to be a good technical artist, okay? That is not my skill set, okay? What I will be is I'll be the one who comes to you and I'll thump your desk and I'll be like, what are you doing to me, man? So there is a technical skill. You need to understand how things work. You need to understand like ins and outs of shape, depending on the artist's position. But there is a technical aspect to it. Don't just think it's all creative wonder. That's just most of it. Programmers. Highly focused skill set. And there's all types of programmers. So I've kind of gone over some of this because I feel like I'm kind of rehashing what I was already been saying anecdotally when we were in a more informal environment. There's engine programmers, physics programmers, gameplay programmers, UI tools. You guys can read this. I don't need to read it to you. Languages are just tools in the toolbox. You understand something to me here? If you don't know a language, like let's say I'm gonna, want you to be a UI programmer and you're gonna come use Scaleform, which is a middleware package that uses C++ and ActionScript. You're like, well, I don't know ActionScript. I don't care. Can you solve problems? Okay? Because problem solving is the key skill that is required as a programmer. Okay? Everything else I can teach you, but you need to be a good problem solver. It's the easiest job to get. Asterisk. Do I need to explain the asterisk?
Yeah.
Okay, let me back up. It's the easiest job to get, but it's got the highest skill set requirements. Now the good news is that most of you are probably looking to enter the position, or enter a programming, those are your programmers, as a junior. My bar for juniors, very low, okay? What I'm looking for is I'm looking for passion, I'm looking for enthusiasm, show me something you've done. Let's work through some problems on the dry board, and that's usually all I need, okay? I'm looking for a pulse, I'm looking for passion. But as you gain more experience, it gets, like if I was to leave Obsidian and go to another place, I would have to study to pass their programming test, right? It's a perishable skill. I'm gonna have to, they're gonna ask me questions, I'm gonna be like, I haven't done a major C in almost 20 years, right? Because I'm more of a gameplay programmer, not a graphics programmer, right? I'm not gonna be able to tell them about gimbal lock, but you know what I'm saying? I'm kind of rambling here a little bit. The point I'm trying to say is that if you come up to me and you show me, and you're like, hey, I know C++, I have a passion, look at this project I made, and we're looking for a junior programmer, you're probably going to get the job, okay? You just need to know the stuff, and if you know it, you're going to get it. There are not, and I actually talked about this with your dean when we were eating lunch and stuff, the demand for STEMs, which is your tech degrees, has been increasing. It's been increasing since I was in college, like exponentially. But the rate of graduation has been flat. Here's the good news about being a programmer. You go and you get your degree, even if it's video game programming, and you're like, I actually don't like video games. This was a mistake. You can still go get a job, right? You can go work for a bank or an insurance company or a database company, and you can get a job with a programming degree. There was always going to be a demand for a programmer. But it's a very low visibility job, right? Nobody's going to be like, again, like unless you're a weirdo, you're not going to know who these people are, really. And there's some exceptions, right? You're John Carmack's. Does anybody know who John Carmack is?
Yeah.
Right. Oops. Somebody come. I'll give somebody a water bottle for that. Or some stuff. I got stuff here to give away. That's an exception, right? But he's also just groundbreakingly brilliant. I'm not. Are we the unsung heroes of the business? Not really. I mean, we do a lot. I mean, Josh Sawyer gives a talk. He talks about how there is no game without programmers. Yes, that's true. But there have been plenty of people who didn't know programming and have made their game. Like the gentleman who made RimWorld. He's a designer. He didn't know programming. He taught himself. Stardew Valley, same thing. He wasn't an artist either, and he taught himself. I say himself. I think he's a guy. Could be a girl. Doesn't matter. You can get past this. You can teach yourself. There are plenty of people who are like, I have a game I want to make. I have a story I want to tell. They can get past the programming hurdle, especially with things like Game Maker, that studio, and then Unity and things like that. It makes things a lot easier. Producers, there were like 2 of you. Yeah, okay. Broadest skill set of them all. You need to know everything if you're going to be a good producer. You need to understand the whole picture, and you need to have management skills. You need to know about what kind of iterative and development process is going to, and I'm saying all this too, and maybe the programmers and the artists and the designers are kind of turning off when they hear this, but here's the reality. You need to know this also, okay? There is a way that a business has to operate to get things done. When there's a game that has to be made, unless you just have a limitless war chest like Rockstar or Blizzard, you have a timetable, okay? That game has to be done within a certain amount of time, plus or minus a small amount of time. So, and that's where producers come in. They schedule, they budget, they make sure you stay on time. It's a very difficult job to do well. And you have to be able to communicate with anyone. So you go up to a programmer, and he starts going beep, boop, boop, you know, whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, I know what you need. You need another day. That's fine. Okay, no problem. And then you go to an artist, and you're like, how's it going? I just don't feel it. Okay, I get it. You know, you got to be able to, and I'm teasing a little bit, but there's a real big difference between the way programmers and artists talk. Does that make sense? Does that even just, on an intuitive level, kind of make sense? You got to be an expert at writing, talking, and understanding. And it's an easy job to get, actually. I see all the time there's people looking for like what they call like an associate producer. You don't actually like see junior. You see like assistant or associate, and I don't know the difference. It just means baby producer. It's an easy job to get. It's a very hard job to be good at. I mean, I could just name names of bad producers and people who have just tanked projects, not on purpose. Their hearts are in the right place. You know, and it's not always their fault, but they can save a project. A good producer can save a project. They're the true unsung heroes. And I'm not just saying that. I don't answer to a producer. I answer to a programmer. But really, a good producer is worth their weight in gold. And they hold the project together. They really do. Okay. Here's how, like a lot of you will probably need to get into the game industry. Quality assurance, the tester. Does everybody know what that is?
Yes.
That's the one who finds stuff like this? That was a close one. He almost was dead for sure. There could be a lot of fun in QA, I'm not going to lie. They've sent me some bugs and I'm just like, wow. It's the easiest entry point for non-programmers. It really is. Again, I'm not saying that you can't get junior or intern levels in the other positions. It's possible. This can be easier. And it's often unappreciated. And I say that shamefully. I've even been short with QA. It's a thankless job, but it is critical for success, good QA. And you're going to also get to see how the sausage is made. And the sausage getting made sometimes is not pretty. And it's also a good chance, like for some of you who haven't finished, if you want to see if this is really what you want to do. If you're lucky enough and you can find a QA position for a summer or a first semester, you're going to get an eyeful. For some of you, it may be like, I'm not sure now. For some of you, it'll just light a fire. You'll see it, and it'll be great. But I'll tell you what, playing games for a job is less fun than you think. I'm telling you, think of like playing the same level of Barbie Doll Dream House for 8 hours straight. And writing bugs. And good quality bugs, not slacking off because then you'll just get fired, but you've done a good job. So, interviewing and getting the job. Be honest. There's a lot of way where we can double, like I said, it's a small industry. Whoops. If you show up and if you tell me like, I'm the best C++ programmer in the world, I'm going to be like, really? I'll ask this question a lot. I'll be like, do you know C++? And you'll be like, yeah. I'll be like, okay. Rate yourself from 1 being I don't know anything to 10 being Bjarne Straustrom. And if they go, who? I'm like, okay, you're not a 10. Okay, so Bjarne Straustrom wrote C++. He created it. Does anybody know who made C? Oh, come on.
I know what his name is.
I know you know. All right, well, it doesn't matter. You're all going to get stuff anyway. So Carnegie and Ritchie wrote C. Anyway, for AT&T Bell Labs. But if you show up and if you tell me, if you're like, I'm an artist, it's a lot easier to double check artists. If artists show up and they're like, look at this stuff I did for this game company, did this. Google image search is going to tell me a lot if you actually made it. And if I get sent to another artist page or this, and if I go and if I call them up or if I email them, I'm going to know. And I mention this not because I've had junior artists lie to me, or people looking for artists, but I've had senior artists lie to me. Because I interview artists. Being the lead UI programmer on Armored Warfare, I interviewed a lot of UI artists, and a lot of them lied to me. And it's a small industry, so be honest. Just tell me truthfully. Again, for junior and intern level positions, the bar is low. I'm not looking for somebody who's already set the world on fire. I'm looking for somebody who wants to set the world on fire. Okay? And be professional. All right? Show up on time. Be polite. We had a guy named Eric Navalis we hired him, and he's, honest to God, one of the most talented engineers I've ever met. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He works for either Netflix or Twitter now. He, in his interview, every other word out of his mouth was an F-bomb. He's like, you take the effing thing here, and the effing thing here, and then you move the effing thing and everything. And just like, he didn't, thankfully for him, he didn't mean it maliciously, he talked that way for some reason. I remember we walked out of the interview and Darren, one of the owners, goes, "Is it just me or does that guy cuss a lot?" I was like, it was so surreal and stuff, and we told him about that later. Anyway, he slipped through. I mean, because he was just super talented. Just, but try not to do that. I have to worry about this like when I talk, like in front of college kids, I can let one slip. I try not to because, but be professional, you don't need to wear a suit or a tie. Wear pants or shorts, but again, this is all anecdotal. At Obsidian, like, if you show up wearing a suit, we're just going to kind of, chuckle slightly, like we're not going to be mean to you, right? And I was sharing this also, by the way, how am I doing on time? Okay, this is the most crucial thing I can tell young people getting into the industry. You are interviewing the company also, okay? If you show up and they treat you like dirt, or just are rude, or if they're whatever, like if the guy you're interviewing is like rude to you and this is going to be your boss, maybe you don't want to work there, okay? I can't stress that enough. You're looking for things. If you get there and you ask them questions, what's crunch time like? We don't have crunch time. I don't believe you. I'm not saying it like that. I'm just saying like, well, okay, you've never had crunch time before? Oh, well, we have. Okay, now we get it. What's it like? Oh, well, we provide dinners. We try not to encourage it, da-da-da-da. Okay, that's all right. If they're like, well, like, I had a friend of mine named Matt who used to work for EA. Does everybody remember the whole EA spouse thing? Was that before your time? Where they sued them and it was a whole big thing? He was there during that time period. He was not the EA spouse or whatever, but he had to work. This was required. It was not something like, it just had to be done because the project was late. This was required. He had to work 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. That was just what was required. That was on Command and Conquer. That's not cool. All right, you think you can do it because you're young and maybe you can, but I'll tell you what, your laundry's going to start stacking up, and your house is going to start. It's hard. And again, like I said earlier, practice. And by this I mean actually practice for getting the job. Interview. I shared some of this also. This is especially important for programmers. How many of you were programmers? It was a lot of you, right? I'm guessing a lot of you were shy. This has just been my experience. I'm the only programmer I know of that is not shy. It is difficult to show up for an interview. You're already nervous because you want the job. How many of you have actually been to a job interview for programming? How many of you actually already got a job in the game industry? Couple? One over there? Okay, good. Maybe. Were you nervous? Yeah, I bet. Okay. Did they dry board you? Were you a programmer? Did they dry board you?
I'm a designer, and I'm working with people that I met in college.
Okay.
I kind of already knew them.
So you had an in, but even then you were still nervous. You had an in and you were still nervous. When you interview for a programming position, when you interview for an art position also, they're going to review your portfolio. They're going to ask you questions. They're going to talk to you about your composition and your colors and this and stuff, your silhouettes. I can't speak specifically about that. I can give you portfolio tips though. You talk about it as a designer, they're going to send you up to the dry board and they're going to be like, tell me why leveling up in this game is fun or bad. And they're going to expect you to be able to explain this. They're going to be like, anyway, with programmers, they're going to send you up to the dry board, probably, or they're going to do something even worse, which is they're going to test you on a computer. And they're going to be like, answer this problem. And you need to be comfortable with that. I recommend this to everybody. Find a group. They don't even have to be your friends. Just find a group of people with similar interests, which is to get a job in the game industry, and do a thing once every 2 weeks. One of you volunteers to look up a bunch of questions, get one of these rooms, go in there, and people will go up to the board and you will do that question in front of people. Work through the answer, on the dry board. Get used to it. Because even that's still not going to prepare you completely, but it'll help. Because I have seen so many people who are smart and bright and they get up there and they just choke. Because it's scary. It really is. So, and again, some of you will still get through it. Like, I shared this anecdote. We had a guy named Myron Liu. He'd been in college. He had like 2 degrees. Super smart guy, very quiet. And I think what happened was his parents finally just said, get a job. Because I think he was working on his 3rd degree. And he showed up to interview. And I remember Jay Fong was, very senior programmer, very smart. Sent him up to the board to do some sort of question involving like either signs and vectors or something. I don't remember the specifics of the question. Now, normally you get a question like this, and even senior programmers will take their time. They're going to write down what you want, they're going to take some notes, they're going to do whatever, and then they'll proceed to work through the problem. And they'll get it right, hopefully. And then if it's a junior, there may be some struggle. They'll be like, well, maybe if you try this, or try plugging in 0 there and see what happens. You'll work through them. And Myron just goes up to the board, he's just like, throws the pen down and goes and sits down. But like it literally took him like 30 seconds. And he goes and he sits down. And I look over at Jay, and Jay was like, that's the fastest I've ever seen anybody do it. We hired him, by the way. But then I sat down to ask him, and I was like, well, let's talk about programming. He's like, well, I haven't taken any programming classes, I'm self-taught. And I'm like, okay, we'll start at the beginning. What's the difference between a pointer and a reference? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, all right, we're gonna make this work anyway, right? Because again, he just got there and he just crushed it. But, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice here. So, your best allies in this right now are each other, right? If you're artists, get together, review your portfolio. Try to find somebody you can send it to. I have some people I can maybe get to review some portfolios at Obsidian. There's other professionals here, like probably the guy or the girl or whoever from Riot. So many people want to help. And that's also a sign of a good company. When you go there and you're interviewing and you're struggling and they try to help you work through it, that's a good sign. Because what they want to do is they want to see you succeed. Learn from your mistakes. I cannot tell you how many interviews I've watched, okay? In that time window, when Black Owl was gone, and I was like, well, I've already burned my ships because I quit my job at Netscape, so I was like, I got to get into the game industry. So many just interviews blown. And you know, that's fine. It's a learning experience. You know, you didn't start off learning how to ride a bike or juggle or whatever else you can do. And persevere. Above all else, you got to persevere. That's just the definition of persevere, in case you didn't know. I just think it's a beautiful definition. Continue in a course of action, even in the face of difficulty, or with little or no prospect of success. It's the definition of perseverance. We have bad days too, I'm not going to lie. Just like every other job. When your plan meets the world wins. Nothing goes as planned. You've all heard that before. It is the God's honest truth. It absolutely is. Managing scope is not just key, it is the key. How many of you are working on little projects together? I say little, I don't mean to be disparaging, but they're small, that's scope. How many of you have had to scope down or cut features? Yeah, you're learning lessons. That's critical. That actually happens in the real world, or the professional version of the game industry also. I cannot tell you how many times we have to cut stuff. It's a good skill to learn. And that brings me to, a little lesson, which is don't get married to any of it. No matter how much money and time you have, scope always needs to be managed. That is a skill. The more you learn that, the sooner you learn that. That's actually a good thing. If you actually go in there and I'm talking to you about your project, and I may even ask you sometimes, how did you go when running it? Did you get things done on time? Do you guys ever set goals when you were working on your own projects? That's a good skill. And if you don't make it, why didn't you make it? Evaluate it. Was it just because you had too much stuff going on, classwork loaded up? That's fine. How did you adjust? Hard work, patience, and ingenuity can help, but experience is the greatest teacher. Don't be concerned with doing it right. Just be concerned with doing it. Okay? If I tell you that, if you guys are working on a little RPG game or a racing game, and you're like, I need to put in some sort of inventory screen, right, for this, and you're like, I don't know if I should do it this way or do it that way, just do it. Okay? Because you can rewrite it 10 times and still not be satisfied with it. Just get it done and move on to the next thing. The important thing is to get it done. There's very little room in the game industry for what I call ivory tower programmers. I didn't invent that term. Does anybody know what that means? So you'll hear it, maybe it's a little too old school for you, but these are the programmers who are they're going to write a system, and it's got to be perfect, and it's got to handle everything, and it has to be coded perfectly, just like it says in the books, and it never gets done. It's terrible. Usually you just have to actually go and yell at them and say, just check it in. And I'm running out of time. I took too long on some of this. Crunch time. Everyone has it. It always sucks. Crunch time has a silver lining. Believe it or not, it actually does. How many of you have done one of these game jams where you work all night and do something like that? How many of you understand that bonding that you had when you were tired and you were all working together and you felt like you were drawing strength and energy from each other? That's the silver lining of crunch time, all right? That's one of the reasons why, even when I've been on projects and I didn't have work to do, I'll show up on that weekend. Sometimes I'll come in and I've brought donuts, I've shown up, I've done whatever, and I'll try to work. Why? Because you can't do any of this alone, right? And it's a team, and you want to be a part of the team, and you want to support the team. But that's a silver lining. There's times I look back on it now, and I'm like, hey, remember that time on Neverwinter Nights? Yeah, man. We crunched for 9 months on Neverwinter Nights 2. 9 months, I worked 6 days, sometimes 7 days a week, and it was brutal. I actually got to the point where I started grinding my teeth, and I cracked all my teeth. And I had to spend $10,000 in dental repairs. And that was when I was making $55,000 a year. Okay? So, that was a dark time for Obsidian. We were, early. Does anybody know how long the average independent game studio lasts? I think 'cause I
5 years?
No.
2?
2. Who said 2? You get a water bottle.
Oh, sweet.
2 years. That was a good guess, though. Obsidian's been around for 14 years. So we've already beaten the odds. But again, like, if you go join like an independent, you go join like EA. Well, anyway, moving on. It's a marathon, not a sprint, okay? It's time and pressure. You're spending time, you're applying pressure, that's all it is. It's important also to have ways to relieve that stress. Like we used to play Unreal Tournament at work when we were doing Neverwinter Nights 2, 2004. Vehicle Capture the Flag. It was awesome. Don't get married to your design. So for the ones who want to be designers and for programmers, and even for artists, this is also applicable. During Neverwinter Nights 2, we were crunching hard, really hard. I mean, again, it was show up at like 9:30, stay till 10:30. Nobody was telling you to stay. There was just so much work to be done. We had to finish Neverwinter Nights 2, or else there would be no game studio. And I remember Josh Sawyer and Chris Allen had taken over as the lead designers of Neverwinter Nights 2. And again, I'm sharing an office with Rich Taylor, and all of a sudden Josh comes in and he's like, we haven't given anything to the community. Neverwinter Nights 1 has all these features. We're not even feature parity, and we haven't added anything new. And he's like, I want to add this deity system. In Neverwinter Nights 1, when you went through character creation, you could type in a deity, a fantasy realm deity. And it was just a string. That was it. Did nothing in the game. Did nothing. And he goes, I have this system that I built. And we'll do this. And it was a network game, multiplayer, so you have client server and packets and stuff. And he's going over this, and he's just drawing this all out on the board. And I'm just sitting here, and I'm like, I'm drowning, right? And I look at him, and I was like, here's what I've got. This is the code that already exists. It takes a string, throws it over the wall to the server sends it back. He goes, if you can build a system that works just on a string, just a string for data, he goes, I'll do it. And he goes, give me a minute. And he leaves, and 30 minutes later, he comes back, he's like, here's my design. And he changed it. And it worked, and I sat there and I was like, okay, all right, I'll do it. So I spent 3 days working later, and I did all this, and he checked it in, and we had a functioning deity system. So like if you're like, I'm a lawful good paladin, die, beggar, evil, boop, you would lose your deity. And it would make you pick a new deity, and you become like all the stuff we built up. We did Mask of the Betrayer, and we built off of that system. And I got written up for writing that. I had my review, because we have an annual review, and my boss came in there and he brought it up and he was like, you went off task and you did this and you spent this time building this system, and you're being punished for it. And I was like, really? But it's true, and it did, and I was right to be punished for that, okay? I'm glad I did it, but I was right to be punished for it. I did go off task, which put the project at risk. It's a price I willingly accepted for that. And then I make sure to remind people about it when we got an expansion built off of that feature, of course. But the point I'm trying to say is that like there's a price to be paid for all of these decisions you make, especially if you go off target. But the important part about that also was Josh wasn't married to his design. The previous designer, who I won't mention, had a lot of good ideas. And I'd be like, it's not going to fit within this scope, or we're just overburdened. And he would literally hold his breath. Just talk, hold, no, for hours, and just kill our productivity because he refused to budge. Yeah, it was really bad. He was a nicest guy in the world. Like he just was intractable. But in the end, even on those bad days, you're still making video games, all right? And it's awesome. It really is awesome. And the best day in the business that you will ever have is the day you ship the game. It is hard. Has anybody here actually shipped a game? Even if it's just putting it out there and letting your friends play it, right? You're getting a little taste of that. They're like, oh, this is cool. So, like even here, people are looking at your games like, this is awesome, this is cool. You're getting a taste. That's right. Have you ever heard of like the acting bug? People are like, oh, I'm going to just do a community theater thing, and now they get the bug, and they want to be an actor. It's a great feeling, even if the game is bad. Even if the game is bad, because you know why? It's over. It's over, and you can move on. I'm not kidding. Absolutely not kidding. Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic 2. Well-reviewed game. Neverwinter Nights 2. It's not on Steam, so I couldn't even screenshot it. It's a well-reviewed game. Alpha Protocol was not reviewed well at all. And then later on, people started to look at it, and they were like, wow, this game's actually amazing. And it would frequently be on the top of lists of best RPG you've never played. And people would praise its choice and its consequences. That was a rough day when that game came out. We worked on it for 4 years, and I could spend another hour telling you horror stories from Alpha Protocol alone. Fallout New Vegas. A lot of people worked really hard on that project. And it came out, and they thankfully were rewarded with great reviews. I mean, it had some bugs, had some issues, they worked it all out. And that was a good day. South Park. Boy, that game just nailed it when it came out. But that game also, a lot of hard work. Pillars, same thing. And Tyranny, same thing. These are all good days. You spend that day at work and you're just like F5 on game rankings. And you're just looking at Metacritic. You're like, yeah. And they come in, they're like, hey, I need you to look at it. Get out of here. It's like, so do you still want to make games? Yeah. I hope so, because we need you. And the reality is we do. We need every single one of you, right? There's just not enough. I know I said it's a hard job to get, but anything if it was easy just wouldn't be worth doing. You all have fresh blood and fresh ideas. The industry needs it. Every day, new ideas. And it's the second best job I ever had. I mean it. It's second best. Because I used to drive tanks up there. I know I went a little long, and we only have a few minutes, but I'll take some questions if you have any. And it's my first time, so you can even send me just an email with less of this, more of this, focus on this, whatever. I'll take it. My ego's not so big I can't take feedback. And if you have any questions, I guess we can do it this way.
Yeah, do you have an example of some sort of whiteboard problem?
I do. I actually ripped pages out of my notebooks and I brought them here, so I know there's going to be a Q&A thing or whatever. If you guys want to hang out, I don't want to encourage you to hang out because I think there's lots of other great talks to go to. But I did bring some stuff. You can flip through it and look through it. There's a couple that are example questions, but anything else? Okay. Well, thank you. Oh, go ahead. That's okay. Are you? No? Okay, I keep seeing hands, so I don't know. Are you guys just messing with it? But, yeah, go ahead.
What do you mean not officially for Fallout Vegas?
Oh, was that you who asked me that? Oh, no. Are you just overheard?
Yeah.
Oh, no, not officially. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. No. Another good example about a designer. I'll finish this up. Josh Sawyer's working on Fallout New Vegas. And Fallout 3, which is a great game, but in Fallout 3, most of the combat had to be played through that, so you couldn't really play it as a shooter. And Josh was like, I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that I'm going to get into this. This all ties in. He says, I want to try to make it to where you can play Fallout New Vegas without using VATS if you didn't want to. Again, not that there's anything wrong with that. He goes, but I want the game to play as a shooter. The problem was that Josh didn't know anything about guns. Oh, by the way, when you guys leave, I've got stuff here. I got a mouse pads and water bottles so you guys can come get some stuff. So Josh didn't know anything about guns. And he was like, you're in the Army or worse, so you know a lot about guns. And I'm like, I know some things about some things. I'm not an expert. But this is an example of dedication as a designer. Josh went and spent money and bought firearms and learned how to use them. He bought the Grand Moss, whatever, I can't name the names. He bought a Colt 45, 1911. He bought various rifles, and because he wanted to understand ammunition and shooting and firing. He's not like a gun nut. He still has it. And he talks about it, but he was like, this is something I don't know anything about, but I think it's important. So he spent time, and he went to ranges, and he would do research, and he would come and talk to me about questions, and I would give him a lot of feedback. So what I did is I spent a lot of time after work. I would play Fallout New Vegas. I didn't play with a controller. I don't know why I did that. But and I would give him feedback on a lot of firearms and a lot of stuff like that. So it was all just for me, just being enthusiastic about the game. I did not officially work on it in any fashion, but it was great. So that's the thing, again, designers need that level of dedication, right? If you all of a sudden get tasked, you do have to make a game about Barbie Doll Dreamhouse, right? Embrace it, and try to find something that you can do with that, and go buy Barbies and play with Barbies.
So I'm one of those few people that does want to be a producer on a game, so directing and everything, and so I want to consider myself, even though I have a formal college education, kind of a jack of all trades, and that I put focus into learning pixel art and stuff. But there are certain fields that I'm not really as proficient in, like illustration or audio.
You don't have to be. You have to understand.
And so I understand communication is a big thing, but I'm somebody who doesn't really have the best communication. So what would your advice be for someone who wants to be a producer but doesn't have good communication?
Practice. Communication is pretty